Rebecca Lieb. I'm back. You know me, and you know Oren. But we've also got a long overdue member of the constituency up here, which is Luke Chatelain, as you heard from West Elm, a company that has been profitable for 26 or 27
years
quarters.
Of quarters of double digit.
As retail crumbles to dust around us, you obviously know some sort of secret. So Luke heads innovation at the company. Tell me a little bit about what that means and specifically what that means around video.
Sure, yeah. So thank you so much, Rebecca. It's really nice. And thank you, Oren, for having me here. It's exciting. And I hope we can provide something for you guys of value here. I think from a brand perspective, it's always interesting because every brand's a little bit different. But hopefully some of the approaches that we all take are similar. So what I was actually brought on at West Elm to do, and it was nice because I started out for a while actually consulting with West Elm, and then got to kind of try before I bought, if you would. But what we actually do and what we really preach is a lot of piloting and prototyping and testing and learning. I think we all talk a lot about data here and data-driven and all that stuff, and that's great to talk about. It's another thing to make sure that we're actually doing that stuff. So for me, that's really the role that I've been brought in to do, is really understand a lot of the things that can impact our business, specifically on small, more tactical sort of outlets, and figure out how that we can roll those out to all of not only West Elm itself, but all of the different WSI brands. Our brands encompass Williams-Sonoma, Pottery Barn, Mark & Graham, and Rejuvenation as well. So we're sort of almost the piloting company for all the pilots and prototypes and testing that we do. And for me, that's like my bread and butter. That's the thing I'm most excited about in the world, is how do we figure out what actually works.
So what does actually work? And specifically, let's tie that, because everybody here is dying to know. And we are sitting here under a sign that says outcomes. So what kind of outcomes are you looking for specifically with video activations?
Sure, yeah. So I mean, I think it's very important, as I said, to really understand how to move the ball forward. So we're working with people like Eyeview to really actually take video and push it to the limits where we can actually get solid data-driven insights from that. So from our standpoint, that means a lot of things, right? So that means, how do we actually create new types of content that can push the needle forward? How can we target people in ways that actually allow us to then generate more revenue? And then specifically, we're looking at that from an ad cost perspective. So we're really looking at that from how much money do we put into the advertising costs that we have, and how much revenue does that drive? And that's a big piece for us, right? Is how do we tie those two numbers together so that it's not just sort of this ethereal idea that, oh my gosh, this is an amazing idea, and look, I've been on the agency side as well, so I don't want to rip agencies at all, but like, oh my God, that's an amazing, creative, beautiful thing. Does it actually press the business forward, and can we actually prove that in a meaningful way?
Thanks, Luke. So, Oren, I've got a question for you, because we are, again, talking about outcomes. And video, specifically digital video, has really been a punching bag lately, you know, from Facebook miscalculating millions of impressions, if not billions, to P&G's head of media calling the entire media supply chain crappy. That's a quote. Is outcome-based video a remedy to all of this kind of flack that the industry has been under lately? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Kind of protecting all of digital media in the room here. But I think, I mean, he's 100% right. I think digital video, although I think has the biggest promise for a medium, so it sound in motion, very specific and unique targeting, ability to change creative, everything we've talked about today, it's been kind of a rough start, although fastly growing, and there is definitely a big problem of fraud and viewability. So those kind of two have been talked about a lot across the industry. And specifically in the last, I think about a month ago, there was a huge kind of a fraud issue of Russian hackers, and I think it was probably a lot bigger than what the news have seen. It's about 5 million a day of fraud of digital video. So all this stuff creates a lot of kind of a bad rap. But when you focus on outcomes, and we like to call it the antidote, and we're trying to tell that to our advertisers of the market, you are taking accountability on performance and on results. So if you don't provide a great ROI on the dollar we're getting, we're not going to renew our business. So we have to be extremely careful on what inventory we buy. is it viewable, and is it fraud? And because we've set up so many technology to prevent that, because we've got to commit to outcomes, we're really almost not hurt at all from it. So, because we're just not buying that type of inventory. But when you optimize for the lowest CPM you can get, which is a very normal conversation you're having with the brands or the media agency, those CPMs are too high, as we heard before. There's no CPM that's too high. It's about what's there. If it drives performance, that's great. So we actually buy very expensive inventory because it works. So I think when you focus on outcome, you kind of, all these ills, you kind of set them behind. If everyone would do that, I think we'd be in a better place.
And I mean, I just want to say too, like, I think that's actually like the real point of data-driven sort of thinking, right? Which is like, hey, what's actually the bottom line here? It's not just that you got a lot of numbers, because a lot of numbers can mean a lot of different things. I mean, you can get a ton of impressions on a tweet. Did that actually drive business? Debatable. But at the end of the day, I mean, understanding what those numbers are and how they tie back to actual revenue or conversion or whatever it is, the metric that you want to use, because all businesses, like I said, are a little bit different, I think is insanely important.
I think we should also all agree to blame all of our problems, whether it's geopolitics or video advertising, on Russian hackers. but moving
you gotta be
along,
careful, though.
Yeah, very careful. Luke, West Elm has achieved tremendous successes, as we've underscored, both with its online business and its bricks and mortar retail business. Without any television advertising, can you address why television advertising hasn't been part of the strategy and talk about what the future state might be?
Yeah, sure. So traditionally, West Elm as a brand hasn't done any TV advertising at all. We've really focused pretty heavily in digital across a variety of different platforms and channels. One of the main reasons is, and I feel like I'm going to repeat this sentence a lot, is that we're really trying to test and learn ourselves into what works. So digital allows us to do a really small spend to sort of set a benchmark and understand what the benefits and the potential are for an application or piece of content, a technology, a delivery mechanism, and then scale that up as we start to see success. I think all those things are insanely important to tie them together. You sort of can't talk about not only video-based advertising, but you can't talk about advertising in general without sort of talking about how the content affects the channel that it's on. And we tend to have this desire and this ability to really validate those things before we actually go out there and spend large dollars behind them. So for us, that's kind of the reason why we've shied away a little bit from TV in the past. Oftentimes, obviously, it's a great awareness mechanism, but there's no real specific ROI that you can pull out from it without doing a lot of very sort of, I'll say, fuzzy math without assaulting anybody, hopefully. And at the same time, I mean, I think that there's an ability, obviously, to start small and then scale up across larger businesses and larger pieces of your organization.
So we've talked a lot about personalized video, recombinant content in personalized video. Are you looking to leverage any of those new technologies and new techniques in your, on television, on other digital channels, marketing initiatives?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I don't think I'm doing anyone a disservice by saying like, oh my gosh, personalization is so interesting right now. I think it is. I think there's a lot of amazing things you can do from a personalized perspective. Again, that does sit on the different content you're driving or the different content you're creating and different channels you're driving to. I think there's a variety of different ways to actually attack personalization, not only from a video and retargeting perspective, which is 100% a really great step into personalization, but there's lots of other small things that you can actually do with your business to move that forward. I tend to talk to a lot of businesses, and I used to also consult before I joined West Elm about trying to take all this stuff. I mean, gosh, if I had a nickel for every time someone said the word machine learning without actually understanding what machine learning was, I would have a yacht at this point, I feel like. But I think that understanding small steps toward bringing your business forward is really important in how you can handle personalization, because if you look at it from an entire business perspective, it's a rather massive potential. So retargeting components, understanding how to better channel your message to individuals and consumers is a really important step toward understanding and getting yourself toward personalization.
Well, I think about talking about personalization and West Elm brand specifically. So although not doing TV, which is, I mean, pretty groundbreaking for a brand to be growing so well and just not be on TV as a strategy, is that they actually do have a lot of video content because they believe in video and they want to tell people about their craftsman work and how they create, what they're selling, and they're trying to create a brand, and they have a lot of content on YouTube and others. And when you think about personalization, I think it's a big opportunity to, following up on the discussion before, how do we tell the West Elm story about craftsmanship and fitting it to the right different, because they have a lot of different types of consumers, they have a lot of data behind it. So produce video content that's really relevant from the data to the right people. You can always also include all the prices and items in stores and all that stuff that creates a lot of value and performance as well. But I think generating and thinking in advance on how to tell the story through video, there's a lot of opportunity with, with that brand and with any brand.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say also West Elm's sort of uniquely positioned that our brand and our products have large-scale story. Oh, hello. Have large-scale stories sort of behind them, and it's extremely important not only to ourselves and the ethos of our company, but also to our consumers. And things like video are really amazing because they can bring forward not only more information about what the product is that we're developing and how we've gotten to this place with the product, but also they can help evoke those emotions that really help to drive people into the store and actually help them complete the purchase. And not only that, but feel really good about that purchase and feel good about showing off this item in their home.
Before we run out of time, I'd like to bring up the concept of retargeting. Retargeting is something that we really all still think of, I would say, overwhelmingly in the context of display advertising. But let's talk about how video can be used in retargeting and how West Elm might be leveraging that.
Yeah, so we kicked off a bunch of basically prototype or pilot programs with retargeting video over the last 3 or 4 months now, and we've set a pretty solid ad cost benchmark that we used for all of our different campaigns to basically show that the ad cost that we're spending is being superseded by the revenue that we're ultimately driving from that campaign. And we set and I can't get totally into specifics, but we set a pretty solid benchmark that was probably a little more aggressive than some of the other targets that we utilize, and we've seen consistently. Seen ourselves consistently hitting that and exceeding that in a variety of different ways. So for us, video retargeting has been extremely powerful. I think there's lots of other levers that we can sort of pull in that world to even make it more powerful. But I think the crux of the matter is that getting the right message, that right story, that bigger brand story in front of the unique individual who's actually trying to find out more information about this product is extremely important, specifically for the West Elm brand. I think that probably applies to a lot of brands, really, but at the same time, because of how we're set up, it's been massively successful for us and something we'll continue down the path with.
Would you like to address how retargeting is laddering up to outcomes?
Yeah,
really?
well, we all know retargeting from those, you go online, you look at a shoe, and then you just blast it around with that same shoe, even if you bought it, and you just continue seeing it. And that's what we kind of know as retargeting. When we're doing video retargeting, in this example, it's a lot more about just finding consumers that are known consumers to the brand. But the story is a lot more about the brand. So most of the ad was still about elevating the West Elm brand. It might have some of the products that people saw, or it might elevate some of that, but it's very different to what we know in display, while still maintaining a super high ROI, which we're very happy with.
So we're entering an inflection point with video, just as we did at the beginning of digital, in which planning and execution can seem like an insurmountable obstacle to people who have been doing this the same way for X number of years, and then suddenly they have to do it differently. Can you offer any best practices in getting this stuff done, getting initiatives off the ground? What are some best practices for getting your feet wet?
Sure. I mean, I'll also take a second to also just mention to everybody that probably video is going to change dramatically in the next few years as we start talking about live and 360 and VR and all sorts of stuff like that. But that's a whole different topic for a whole different day. So we're going to have to go through probably this sea change again very soon. But I do think that for the most part, what you can do is really just set yourself up with small scalable components that you can actually roll out. So don't try and boil the ocean, as they say, on first go around. Start attempting smaller tactical solutions to actually make some stuff work, to understand where your investments and where you need to actually continue to invest. I think that's extremely important, because as you get into the world of retargeting, as you get into the world of video too, I mean, it's complex sometimes to create videos. It's complex sometimes to create multiple videos that would then be able to personalize to those people in a meaningful way when you're retargeting. But it's important to sort of set the bar at a place that you can understand the value and then keep adding on as you see where it's working. Oftentimes you'll also find that some content types work better than others. I mean, this is a standard digital channel we're working with, and all this stuff goes into making it a success.
Yeah, well, I think the question was also about the value chain, the existing value chain. So I think we're doing that's a little bit special and I would say different is that what we found out that it's really hard in the current ecosystem and value chain of a creative agency that thinks of a TV brief, and then a media agency that executes on specific media metrics, and then a separate measurement vendors, even if they come. And it's really hard to get to an iterative process where you're generating, well, first you start with the data, all right, who's my audience, what's the products like? And then you generate different stories according to the products, you run it against audiences, and then you get the feedback loop, and you see what's working, what's not, and you keep on changing. It's almost impossible to do that in the regular ecosystem of how things work. And we, just because everything we do is about personalization and we're running, tens of campaigns a day and constantly do it, we had to feel like we got to take a lot of that value chain in-house. So we have a creative shop, almost a small creative agency that works with creative agencies to make sure it works. And data goes from creative to media, and media communicates with creative because they're in, they turn around because that table's right there, and they can actually work together, where opposed to the current ecosystem, they might be in different countries. So I think the value chain really needs to change to support personalization and iterative creative, and I think it's a great opportunity for us. That's why I think we're growing fast, and to work with agencies to show them how it works.
And we've certainly been hearing about this gulf between creative and media all day. So last question, really fast. I'd like 2 pragmatic suggestions from each of you on how video, specifically addressable video, personalized video, can help turn the tide and make video less of a branding medium and more of a direct sales medium.
I mean, I hate to point at the thing behind me, but focus on outcomes, right? I mean, focus on a data-driven approach, and don't just say that word out loud at a bunch of meetings. Like, actually figure out a way that you can implement that. I honestly think that the hardest part for all this stuff is how do you actually operationalize this idea that you're going to make decisions based on data. It's easy to get in a room and understand that something looks beautiful or is super creative and get really excited about it, but if it's not moving the needle in a tangible way, it's honestly not valuable for your business. So definitely that's the easy first one. And the second one I would say is just continue to iterate up. I mean, there's vendors out there that can help you iterate through these processes. There's lots of people out there that also understand, I pointed right. There's also lots of people that can actually talk with you about iterative approaches, not only to building your business, but building all the facets of what you're doing from both content and video and all that stuff. And I think that iteration methodology is really important to a lot of things, especially the things we do at West Elm, and I think it can be very important to a lot of things that are done throughout across the brands.
Oren, two ways.
Yeah. Well, first I'll reiterate what was said here before by the measurement panel. They were all completely in agreement that creative is the biggest driver of outcomes. So focused on data-driven, advanced storytelling. If you really try to, as a marketer and agency, put your mind in, we're going to do this, then you'll have to go through everything, and you'll have to have. You'll have to look at outcomes because none of your media metrics would work if you're measuring creative, and you'll start focusing everyone on the right goal. So I think thinking about creative and advanced storytelling, and trying to think of another one that hasn't been said, but I mean it's a lot of the use of data in an iterative process to see use the data to target and create creatives. Run it, but then through the campaign, see what works, see what don't, change it again, and an iterative process, I think, will do a lot to get there.
And I'll also say to that, like, the nice part about starting small is, like, don't be scared to try stuff that's different, right? Like, I feel like we get, especially with massive advertising buys and even like massive television ad spends and things like that, it gets really easy to make sure everything is super pixel perfect and it's unbelievably like well thought through, but that can still fall super flat on its face. You have an opportunity with small iterative testing to really sort of work from the ground up and try things you normally wouldn't try, knowing that it's only going to hit a small segment and only going to cost you a little bit. And I think that can be a really powerful thing too.
Just do it. Fail fast,
Yeah, exactly.
move forward. Oren, Luke, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you.